In September of 1921, one of the most famous men in America checked into a hotel suite in San Francisco, and by the time he checked out, his career, his reputation, and his entire public identity had been destroyed forever. His name was Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle, and for a brief moment, he was more famous than Charlie Chaplin. Within days, newspapers across the country would brand him a murderer. Within a year, he would be acquitted by a jury that took only minutes to clear his name. And yet, that acquittal would matter to almost no one. Hollywood, it turned out, was never really interested in the truth. It was interested in the story. This is the beginning of a much longer, much darker pattern, one that stretches across decades of glamour and silence, and it starts with understanding how quickly the industry could turn on its own. Arbuckle's case began at a party in the St. Francis Hotel, where a young actress named Virginia Rappe fell critically ill and later died. The exact cause of her death remains debated by historians to this day, with some medical accounts pointing to a ruptured bladder possibly linked to a pre-existing condition, and sensationalized press coverage at the time insisting on far more scandalous explanations. Arbuckle faced 3 trials. The first 2 ended in hung juries. The third resulted in a full acquittal, with the jury even issuing a formal statement expressing that a grave injustice had been done to him. But the damage inflicted by the press coverage, particularly by William Randolph Hearst's newspaper empire, was irreversible. Hearst himself reportedly said the Arbuckle scandal sold more papers than the sinking of the Lusitania. Arbuckle's films were pulled from theaters. His name was erased from movie posters. A man who had done more to build American comedy than almost anyone alive was, in effect, exiled from the industry he helped create. What makes the Arbuckle case so revealing isn't just what happened to him, but what happened after. Hollywood studios, terrified of losing public trust and box office revenue, moved quickly to control the narrative around their stars. Within a year, they brought in Will Hays, a former postmaster general, to lead a new organization that would eventually produce the Hays Code, a set of strict moral guidelines governing what could and could not appear on screen. But the code wasn't only about content. It was about controlling actors' personal lives, off-screen behavior, and public image, often through morality clauses buried deep inside studio contracts. The industry had learned a valuable lesson from Arbuckle's downfall. It wasn't enough to entertain audiences. Hollywood needed to manage perception at all costs, even if that meant sacrificing the people who built it. That same era produced another mystery that remains unsolved to this day. In February of 1922, film director William Desmond Taylor was found shot dead in his Los Angeles bungalow. The investigation quickly spiraled into a web of rumors involving actresses Mabel Normand and Mary Miles Minter, both of whom had connections to Taylor and whose careers were effectively destroyed by association, despite neither ever being charged with a crime. Letters, love triangles, and studio interference in the police investigation only deepened the confusion. Evidence reportedly went missing. Witnesses gave conflicting statements. To this day, no one has ever been convicted, and the case remains formally unsolved. What is clear, historically documented, and widely discussed by film historians is that the studios of the time actively worked behind the scenes to protect their financial interests, sometimes at the expense of a proper investigation. The Taylor case became a symbol of just how much power studios wielded, not only over films, but over real criminal matters involving real lives. 2 years later, in November of 1924, another death would rattle the highest circles of Hollywood power, this time aboard a luxury yacht owned by William Randolph Hearst himself. Film producer Thomas Ince died shortly after a party celebrating his birthday, a party that included Hearst, actress Marion Davies, and Charlie Chaplin among its guests. Officially, Ince died of heart failure. But the surrounding circumstances, a rushed cremation, inconsistent witness accounts, and Hearst's enormous influence over the press, fueled decades of speculation that something else may have occurred aboard that yacht. No conclusive evidence has ever proven foul play, and reputable historians caution against treating rumor as fact. Still, the case remains one of the most enduring unsolved mysteries in American entertainment history, a reminder that even the most powerful men in the country weren't immune to scandal, and that money could shape not just headlines, but official records. As the studio system matured through the 1930s and 1940s, the mechanisms of control became more sophisticated and far more personal. Contracts didn't just dictate how many films an actor owed a studio. They dictated who they could date, what they could say publicly, and how they were expected to behave in every aspect of their lives. Judy Garland's experience at MGM has become one of the most documented examples of the system's darker side. According to biographies written by authors such as Gerald Clark, Garland was placed on strict diets and given amphetamines to keep her energy up during long filming days, followed by barbiturates to help her sleep at night, a cycle that biographers widely agree contributed to a lifelong struggle with substance dependency. She has spoken publicly, in interviews later in her life, about the intense pressure she faced regarding her weight and appearance as a teenager under contract. MGM controlled nearly every aspect of her image, and the studio system that made her a star also, according to multiple biographers, played a significant role in the struggles that would follow her for the rest of her life. Garland's story wasn't unique. It reflected an entire industry built on control, one where studios employed publicists whose primary job wasn't promotion, but suppression, managing scandals before they ever reached newspapers. Fixers negotiated with police departments, paid off witnesses, and arranged sham marriages to hide the sexuality of gay and lesbian stars who would have faced professional ruin if their private lives became public. This practice, often referred to by historians as the studio system's lavender marriages, affected numerous stars throughout the golden age of Hollywood, though specific individual cases remain debated among biographers due to the secrecy surrounding them. What remains undeniable is the broader historical reality, an industry that projected images of freedom and glamour onto movie screens while enforcing rigid, often cruel control. Behind the scenes. By the late 1940s, Hollywood faced a different kind of scandal, one rooted not in personal behavior but in political fear. The House Un-American Activities Committee began investigating alleged communist influence in the film industry, leading to the blacklisting of writers, directors, and actors suspected of leftist sympathies. The Hollywood 10, a group of screenwriters and directors who refused to testify before the committee, were sent to prison and permanently blacklisted, their careers destroyed regardless of guilt or innocence. Talented writers were forced to work under pseudonyms for years just to continue earning a living. Dalton Trumbo, one of the most acclaimed screenwriters of his generation, won an Academy Award under a false name during this period, a fact that wasn't publicly corrected until years later. The blacklist era revealed how easily fear could be weaponized within an industry built on public image, turning colleagues against each other and destroying careers based on suspicion rather than proven fact. The scandals of Hollywood's golden age weren't isolated incidents. They were symptoms of a system designed to prioritize image over truth, box office returns over basic accountability. Marilyn Monroe's career, and her death in 1962, remains one of the most publicly dissected examples of this dynamic, with countless biographies exploring how studio pressure, personal struggles, and intense media scrutiny converged in her final years. Authors like Donald Spoto have written extensively about the gap between her public image as a glamorous sex symbol and her private reality, a well-documented tension that mirrored so many other stars of her era. Whether examining Arbuckle, Garland, Monroe, or the blacklisted writers of the 1950s, a pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Hollywood's brightest lights were often the most tightly controlled, their public triumphs carefully curated to hide personal struggles that the industry had, in many documented cases, actively contributed to creating. What's remarkable, looking back across nearly a century of these stories, is how much of this history has simply faded from public memory. Audiences today can name Marilyn Monroe or Judy Garland instantly, but the deeper context behind their struggles, the systemic pressures, the exploitative contracts, the calculated media manipulation, has largely been replaced by simplified narratives of tragic genius or personal weakness. The uncomfortable truth is more complicated. These weren't simply individuals who couldn't handle fame. They were often people caught inside a machine explicitly designed to extract maximum value from their talent, while offering minimal protection for their well-being. Understanding this history doesn't diminish their achievements. If anything, it deepens our